Hey, Sassy Stuff. I'm Emma here with Bailey, back with another locker room talk. And today we're going to talk about everyone's favorite thing, the transfer portal. Love it, hate it. Sometimes you get a great player, sometimes you lose 30 players in one go. So we want to get not only your opinions, but we're going to give our opinions on the transfer portal. So, how do you feel about the transfer portal, Bailey?
Oh, if you had asked me this question before NIL, I think I might have had a different opinion for sure. But with what we have witnessed this past season, I think there needs to be some rules, some regulations, and some things that come into place. Yes, I think what we're looking at now is that players are having to look at themselves as like free agents. And I get that. And you got to do what's best for yourself. But it really does discourage loyalty to a school, to a team, and I think takes away from a lot of the special aspects that made college football so unique and so entertaining to audiences everywhere. It's really hard to keep up with people when you're like, okay, this person was here last year and now they're in freaking North Dakota. I don't know. It's definitely a little bit challenging just to be able to build some sort of sense of relationship equity with a player because there's no loyalty as much anymore. How are you feeling about it, Emma?
At this point, like you said, I just don't like it with NIL. There are ways to fix it, which is what we kind of want to talk about today. So, first and foremost, I think you have to get rid of that December transfer portal window. I just think we've seen it with teams in bowl games as well as teams in the playoffs, like Penn State losing their second string QB to the transfer portal when they're in a playoff game, when they've won a playoff game. You have to get rid of that window. They chose this school, they go to this school for a year. I understand they have to, if they left, they had to go there just to fit up with the school schedule, but I think we just keep it in a spring window. So that's kind of my first little tweak I would do.
I think that you're onto something there. Because I mean, look at it. We had how many different teams we saw that were missing vital players to their offense, to their defense, because they themselves entered the transfer portal. Great in theory. I get it. You're trying to do what's best for you. But you're also setting up your team to fail. Once again, it just reduces the whole idea of camaraderie. I think you're right, though. We got rid of that December transfer portal era. That would be quite a more entertaining bowl season, in my opinion, at least. My gosh.
That's my biggest thing. I want to keep the tradition going. I want the playoffs to be meaningful, and those do mean the most because you have the most players playing in them. Whereas with the bowl games, a lot of people sit out or they're transferring to different schools. So those bowl games just aren't the same anymore. And bowl season used to be such like the pride and joy of college football. And now it's kind of diminished, and I want that back. So having these transfer portals or transfer windows moved, that could be a big thing because then these players want to play in those games. They want to showcase their skills one more time. So then maybe they can transfer to a school that they really want to be at.
Well, and now with NIL though too, and them getting paid, like you're getting paid like a pro. At this point, we really haven't seen the effects of this yet, but we're going to see it probably in the next 2 to 3 seasons to come. Is how many individuals that would have likely committed to going to the NFL draft that have chosen instead to stay in the college world because number one, they're getting paid better. Number two, they're getting more opportunities for a better income stream. And number three, you're also not going to be hurting yourself as likely by going to the NFL. I mean, this is kind of where I think we're going to have to start seeing different changes happen because where the transfer portal is sitting, it really is putting a lot of these top programs into a very negative position. I think it is advantageous for players, yes, but again, it also I think is jeopardizing a lot of these different deals so too that are in place. I mean, look at Carson Beck. That was a primary example that I know that you and Georgia talked about previously on another episode. And with seeing him leaving Georgia, thinking he's going to go to the draft, coming back and potentially looking at Georgia taking him again and Alabama and then committing to Miami, it just is all over the place where I think if businesses are going to have a say in it from the NIL standpoint, they're going to be interjecting to actually keeping these deals to be really sustainable, but also schools are going to have to start stepping up and advocating for changes to be made.
Absolutely. And you touched on two great points in there. One is the NIL. We need to make sure that these players want to stay at the program, that they are making a conscious decision, a mindful decision on where they're going. And something with that could be a player could receive a portion of their NIL deal immediately, but some of those payments get deferred until they stay at a program for a definitive period of time. Also, they could have a scholarship guarantee that the school must honor multi-year scholarships for athletes who transfer, even if they leave the the school before the scholarship term ends. So there's many different things you could do payment wise. But I think on top of that, you need those contracts. There needs to be firm contracting in place saying, if I sign you, recruit you now, then you have to be with me for 2 years. And then we can decide from there where you go. Also, maybe they get one free transfer, and then after that, they have to sit a year or lose a year of eligibility. There has to be consequences in place so players aren't flying all over the place. Players aren't committing for the draft and then taking that commitment back and then going to Miami making 4 million off the top. So there has to be contracts in place, especially with this money. And Nick Saban even brought it up. There has to be some sort of a cap. If you're going to treat them like pre-professionals now and basically professional athletes at this point with the amount they're getting paid, then do it like the NFL and put caps on these different schools, different roles and everything. So that's kind of where I'm going with this as well.
It's like in business, though, too, for example. There's a lot of different companies out there that have policies, quote unquote, called golden handcuffs, where it incentivizes employees to stay on for longer periods of time to be able to make their sort of commission X, Y, and Z. This is kind of the situation we're facing this. If we're looking at this from the generic business standpoint, these players are employees of SEC, college football, whatever sector you're in, I don't care. But you're an employee at this point. And if you are going to be able to actually make the money that you're supposed to from all these different opportunities that are out there, there needs to be an incentive for you to stay committed to what it is that you have agreed to do. So I agree. We could go on this all day, girl. I'm like, oh my gosh, we could do so many different changes. But it's the basic principles of business, though, too, if we're looking at it. And now that college football has really usually taken steps towards becoming more like a business fashion, it needs to be treated as such.
And especially for our smaller programs out there, there's some fantastic students at small programs. We saw at Boise State this year, Ashton Genty, who was sensational. Someone could have poached him easily. And so, really putting really penalizing these programs who illegally tamper with other schools, especially those smaller programs who want their players to build a great, great program and build up those programs that may not have the same amount of money as your big SEC schools or big Big Ten schools.
Well, and like you're talking about though too, I think we're also missing something there too. Yes, like right now this is a structure that's great for the players, but I think long term this is also something that's not good for the players. If we want to see them continue to grow and have these great careers and be able to continue to develop their own successes by not having these boundaries in place and for actually giving them a set of parameters that they can really work with, we're essentially setting them up to fail, especially as they look to head to the NFL potentially as those that look to might be head into the actual workforce after not being able to play professionally from their college careers. We're not giving them the best chance of success by not putting boundaries in place. And I think at the end of the day, we have to also look at the well-being of these different players and prioritize that whenever where people are pitching different ideas of how to make this transfer portal better to set up success in the long term for people to come.
I mean, we could go on all day about changes, and none of these changes are going to happen overnight. It's going to happen slowly, but I think some of the bigger ones need to happen to maintain the joy of college football in a way, because it's become so transactional. I do think the transfer portal is good in a lot of ways because not every player is going to click with every coach or every program or every team, and that gives them the opportunity to go look for a choice that they didn't make when they were 16, 17, 18 years old. So I think that's good that they can learn and grow from different teachers in a sense, because they are students at the end of the day. But there definitely needs to be more guidelines because we are sitting in the wild, wild west right now.
Yes, we are. And also, every single choice has a consequence, both positive and negative. And we do have to be able to give people accountability for making these different choices, to be able to choose what's best for them on the long term, but to also be able to understand that if you choose to commit to something, you have to see it through.
Yep.
Be sure to leave us in the comments, guys. What do you think should change on a transfer portal? Should we put a cap on it? Should it move from its timelines? Should there be more guidelines? Let us know some of your suggestions. And also use the hashtag SEC stuff below.